For this conversation, I am very pleased to welcome Renaud de Viel Castel, Chief Operating Officer of Rubicon, Steve Bennett, Director of SaaS Global Public and Financial Services Sectors at the SaaS Institute, and Tariye Gbadegesin, Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer of Arm Health Infrastructure Fund. Tariye, over to you.
Good evening for me, but I think it's afternoon for you. How are you? Good to see you, Renaud, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Steve. In this session, we're going to be talking about data and analytics in Latin America. And I think as developing economies, and in fact, actually developed economies sort of build up on the foundation of data really as the new most valuable resource. We have to think about how emerging markets in Latin America and other developing economies are going to be able to build a data analytical framework for how they also build their economies and how they almost leverage on data to identify solutions and also scale and make solutions more effective. So building on, I think, a lot of the themes around the power of digital solutions to transform economies. I know both of you and your organizations are working very much in this space. And I think, it'll be interesting to start first really going broad and just talk about, as you're working in the region, what are the main obstacles that you're finding to building data, collecting it and managing it, and as well as, of course, the solutions. What are some of the breakthroughs and how are you sort of championing your organizations through this path? And so I'll start with you, Steve, since you're coming from a broad sort of government environment, and then I think we can then dive into some of the specific work that you're doing, Renaud, with the Rubicon.
Sure. Well, first, Tariye, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thanks to Concordia as well. Excited to be able to talk about this really important subject. So, you're right. Data is so critical. Not just in the Americas, but everywhere. And we think about data as really not an end in and of itself. What you're really trying to help people do is to make better, faster, or cheaper decisions. So it's all about the decisions. And for me, spending a lot of my time thinking about government, government has many hard decisions to make, especially now as we are in the middle of a pandemic. And the ability to capture insights from data is critical to being able to make those decisions that much better. Now, government is one of those industries that has data everywhere. It's got more data than just about any other industry. But the challenge is, as you mentioned, Tariye, sometimes collecting it together, connecting it, managing it to give insights. And so a lot of the work that we do with governments supports the ability to automatically clean and prepare and connect data that could be, really all over the place, and connect it in a way that allows governments to make better decisions and to make them faster. And our goal is to help citizens and families around the world be able to benefit from their governments being able to make those decisions better. So it's really about marshaling all of the power of that data into helping to make better, faster decisions.
Great. No, that's very helpful in terms of laying the groundwork for the power of data. And Renaud, I know Rubicon is very much a data-driven organization in the sort of waste as well as other forms of recycling. Can you speak about your experience in Latin America and how you've been able to build a data-based business and a digital information-based business of something so physical in Latin America?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Tariye. It's great to see you again. And Concordia, thank you for inviting me at this conference. So before I answer your question, just a little bit of background on Rubicon. Rubicon is a tech company. It's got a mission to end waste. And so we have built a platform, a digital platform with, on one hand, we have our customers who generate the waste. So that could be commercial waste or municipal waste. So private companies that have commercial waste, but also municipalities, government that have residential waste. And on the other hand, we have a network of haulers, of collectors of waste. And so they use our platform to get together. And what this platform does is that it brings that visibility, it brings that transparency, and it brings what we're talking about today, data. Data that's going to help cities, for instance, just like Steve was saying, government needs data to make proper decisions. So when you think of a municipality, they want to become maybe a smart city, and in order to improve efficiencies, they need data. And when we talk to them, we say, look, you have a way to collect data. You were talking, Tariye, just about those obstacles to collecting data. Well, we find a solution for them. We look at their trucks that pick up waste and recycling across the city. Well, they could do more than just picking up waste. They could pick up data points. They could pick up information about the city, whether it's the road conditions. They could pick up data around potholes, around damaged curbside, around graffiti. If you know where graffitis are, chances are if you see more and more graffiti, maybe there's more and more crime in this area. Maybe that's data that can help you assign more of a safety, more police in areas where you see more crime. Or if you want to avoid accidents, maybe by knowing where your potholes are, you can make that kind of decision. So again, it's about data. So it's about taking advantage of fleets of vehicles that really are mobile data centers that are just roaming the streets, just picking up waste and recycling. Well, actually, if you give them the proper technology, which we've developed as well, then you can start picking up other data points that I just described. So that's a good example of how you can make more data-driven and based decisions thanks to data that Rubicon is able to help you collect and eventually make your city more efficient or make it a smart city.
Thanks. I think that's it's interesting to hear your perspective as a private company, and then tie that to sort of Steve's points about working with government. And one of the questions I have about this space, especially in developing economies and emerging markets, is the interplay of government and the fact that you have to convince governments that they have something of value, and that it can be used in a certain way. And there's a certain amount of capacity building that goes along with that. So, I'd like to hear from you, Steve, as to how you are working with governments and building capacities and sort of managing that give and take between, acknowledging that there is a lot of data there, but it needs to be managed in a certain way. And that continuum requires quite a bit of capacity. And so how do you deal with that? And then I then want Renaud to talk about the private sector. And again, even as a private company, you're dealing with a lot of municipalities. I can imagine you're dealing with a lot of governments and policy. So how do you think about data policy as a private player? I think that would also be very interesting. So Steve, talk to us a little bit about how you get government to take this, governments to sort of make this transformation.
Well, it's government is always a little bit different than the private sector. They often have very big, challenging problems. Not that the private sector does not, but they often don't know, where the best place to start is. And often, what can motivate a government to act is, as a pressing concern. And for us, your question about how do we help governments get started? Well, SAS, where I'm from, I lead our global government practice at SAS, and we've worked with governments for 44 years all around the world to help take their data and turn it into insights for decision making. And when we were talking to a government, our approach is usually to pick something that they can very quickly have some early success with. We don't ask them, hey, transform your entire way of accomplishing your mission in this new data-driven way. That tends to be less successful, and it tends to have a hard time getting started. So our approach with governments is to pick a small piece of the problem, demonstrate that we can make progress by applying data to that problem, show success, and then build from there. And it's amazing how far you can get with that approach. I mean, just taking Renaud's really big goal of ending waste. there are these large sustainability challenges that governments around the world are facing. You can look at, deforestation in the Amazon, and this is an area where we're working with governments to help apply artificial intelligence to satellite imagery to help automatically detect when there are changes to deforestation in a way that humans couldn't do manually. So when you start small and you show value, big problems like tackling deforestation or tackling animal conservation by taking photographs of animal footprints to count and track where they're going, something we've done in Africa for a number of years, you can make a big impact in some pretty big problems like sustainability if you kind of take things one step at a time and build. So our approach has been to start small, demonstrate value, and then build.
Sure. Renaud, any thoughts on the private angle? And I think the sustainability point dovetails very nicely into your business model.
Yes, indeed. As Steve just mentioned, we have a mission, and that mission is to end waste, and it's a pretty ambitious mission, and we're not going to overcome overnight. But the point is that government goes to us, not just private companies. Private companies do, I mean, we have some of the biggest brands as our customers, and we help them bring visibility to their waste because they're interested in knowing where the waste ends up. They don't just want to get rid of it. They want to know how much of it is recycled, how much of it is diverted away from landfills. So that's something we do with private companies, and there's a big expectation from their investors, from their employees, and from their customers that waste is not just buried. That's a solution that doesn't work very well anymore. As far as government, one thing that is on everybody's mind is waste and sustainability goals and KPIs, and so again, with our technology, we bring that visibility, that transparency that is really lacking in this industry. And by what we really want to accomplish is helping these cities really take advantage of what they already have. And we work with them. We have a whole department called the Smart City Group within our company that's focused on dealing with government, with municipalities. And they sit with the cities and say, okay, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Well, we want to improve recycling. We want to improve recycling. Okay, well, that's a nice goal. Let's think of how we could do this. One thing we developed, for instance, is we're talking about artificial intelligence and image recognition, is that we have a camera that's able to recognize what a bin is. So that camera is in the truck, and it scans the road, and it's going to recognize the bin. But it's also going to recognize the color of the bin. So now we know that, for instance, the blue bins are for recycling, and the green bins are for waste. So with our technology, we're able to recognize the blue bins. And then we can say, here's where we saw the blue bins, and where we didn't see them. So then on a city scale, you're able to say, these are the neighborhoods that don't have the blue bins. They don't pull very much their blue bin out. They're not recycling that much. Maybe as a municipality, we can encourage this specific neighborhood to recycle more, to take that blue bin out more often. Okay, so again, data was able to identify, Steve was talking about a satellite image. There's also technology that's right there that can help as well identify, recognize patterns, and then help make decisions. And so we have cities that were able to pinpoint which neighborhoods needed really more marketing, if I may say, around the importance of recycling. We can also identify the degree to which the cover of the bin is open. If it's open, that means it's probably got a lot of trash overflowing, and that's not a good thing for pollution, for rodents, for whatever. So again, we're able to, on a city scale, identify who tends to have a bin that's overflown with trash. And so you can decide, well, maybe it's time for them to get a bigger bin. And again, on a city scale, that makes a big impact. So these are examples of how you can just use the trucks. You don't have to put new equipment on the street, and just identify trends and opportunities to improve. And the last thing I'll say is that those municipalities, those governments that want to do those things, they can make a giant leap with technology. They can be really behind, and with the technology, they can really become ahead because of this data. So I think that there's great opportunities in South America to make sure that, because there's a demand from the public, from the municipalities, to improve waste collection, improve recycling, and there are tools to do that.
Well, it looks like we may have lost Tariye for the moment. So, so Renaud, they've let us out of the playground, and we're on our own.
Okay.
Well, I had a, Renaud, when we were talking the other day, I had a question about logistics. It came to mind as we were getting to know one another. You have a fleets of vehicles that you need to manage cost as well. It's not just about the goal of ending waste. You've got to manage cost. So, how do you use data to sort of optimize logistics with all of these fleets so that you're kind of getting the cost right at the same time you're trying to accomplish that goal? How does data play into that?
Thank you for asking that. So just to be clear, we don't own any vehicles. We're in a satellite company, but we work with companies when I was talking earlier about the network of haulers we work with, it's close to 7,000 haulers we work with. So they have trucks. And so what they just like we talk with cities about what they want, what they need, we also talk to the haulers, and what do they need? What is their perspective? Well, they need to pick up waste on time. They need to pick up recycling on time. They need to make sure their drivers are safe. They need to make sure their drivers are productive. They need to make sure their vehicles are safe. So there's a lot of data points that they would love to have access to. And on that platform that our customers use and that our haulers use as well, we collect all this information, all these data points, we have them, all this data. Some of it is really relevant to the customer, like the waste streams, what is going to be recycled, what is going not to be recycled. And that's relevant to the waste producer. The city, we gave example of what data is relevant to the city. But to answer your question, the hauler, what's relevant is what I just said, safety and performance. So what we are able to do with our technology inside the vehicles is also collect all the information around speeding, around hard acceleration, hard braking with measuring the G-force. We can also have access to the computer of the truck so that we know about its consumptions, about whether there's tires that are deflated or there's anything that the computer of the truck can capture, we can capture as well. And so then we're able to spit out reports, insights into the fleet. So now we know who's doing a good job at picking up waste and recycling on time, but who's doing it in a safe manner. And you'd be surprised, you can see your driver that's got a nice smile on his face every day and a beautiful uniform that drives like a maniac. And that's the liability right there. So we can, with data, we can say, hey, we're going to give you access. Now, there's some drivers initially that are like, whoa, this is Big Brother. Like, I don't want people to. But soon enough, they realize that there's a real benefit, especially the ones that do a really good job, because now they know that there's proof of how good of a job they're doing. The last point I will mention is around privacy. I just mentioned for the drivers, but think about the municipalities, especially in Europe, and I'm sure in South America too. People are concerned about, oh, you've got all these cameras, you've got all these sensors, you're capturing all this data. What about my privacy? And so we take this very seriously, and we've addressed this by making sure that our algorithm only captures what we teach it to capture and blur everything around. So if we teach it to recognize blue bins, it's going to recognize blue bins. It's going to blur everything around, faces, license plates, addresses, and it's going to only extrapolate the data that we want into the cloud. The rest is not saved. And that's a legal requirement in some countries. Some countries it's not, but yet we still, out of respect for the people's privacy, make sure we do that. Enough. I've talked a lot. My apologies, Steve. Go ahead, please.
One that's interesting when we think about logistics and optimization for governments. It's a similar sort of thing. You're trying to optimize the use of a limited resource. We've worked with Autopistas Urbanas SA in Buenos Aires around predicting highway traffic flow using sensors, collecting data from sensors in a highway to optimize traffic flow. And we've done some things like that with a number of cities around the world, Istanbul and others. And we think a lot about large fleets as well, whether they're military or government owns a lot of postal service delivery trucks. How do you optimize the use of those machines and predict when they're going to break so that you can maintain them proactively. And there's a lot of artificial intelligence that goes into what we call predictive maintenance, that the machine will tell you before it breaks so that you can maximize the amount of time that that's up and running. So lots of uses for data in managing large built infrastructure and fleets.
Absolutely. Great.
Thank you. You guys did great when I got dropped off. So I think
Tariye, we were lost. We were lost without you. Welcome back.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so at all. You guys are doing great. You've gone into exactly what I was going to ask about next, which is around transportation and infrastructure and sort of the digitization solutions for infrastructure. So that was fantastic. One of the underliers to data is actually the networks and sort of the infrastructure that underlies it. And it will be interesting to hear from you on, as you're going into some of these markets that will have, as you move out of urban areas into areas that may have weaker data, weaker networks, if you will, and weaker infrastructure. How have you dealt with that as you're supporting your businesses and supporting very data heavy businesses? What type of innovations are you using to reduce the level of network you need to use, or like how are you managing that to deal with that practically, basically?
I have some ideas, but Steve, I'll let you respond to that one first.
Yeah, just quickly, one of the things you can do to minimize challenges with networks is what you see in a lot of developing countries. They've jumped over the wired infrastructure and gone straight to a wireless infrastructure, and you can get a lot of efficiencies by doing that. I think of applications we use in agriculture where we will automatically have drones fly over large crop fields to detect problems and make decisions. And rather than stream all of that video back over a link that might have challenges with all of that data, you can actually do analytics, what we call on the edge, where a lot of the analytics and image processing happens on the drone, and only the insights have to take up network bandwidth coming back to the user. So that's a way to be efficient with kind of network bandwidth and some of the infrastructure by pushing a lot of the analytics out to the edge onto the device. And then all that you're needing to communicate back and forth, it's not all the data, it's the insights that come from the data because you've already sort of crunched all the data out at the edge. So that's one idea.
Great, Renaud?
Yeah, I don't think we don't have much more time, but I would say that absolutely there's ways. One technology that's being developed is sensors inside trash bins to measure when the trash is full. It's expensive technology. It's not always very reliable, but it's pretty smart. I mean, it's going to tell you when your bin is ready to be emptied. There's another way to do that that's a lot less expensive, is to just play with the data. What if I tell you I can predict when your bin is going to be full? Why? Because I know what type of waste you have, because you're a restaurant or because you're an office space. So I know what type of waste, I know what type of business you are, I know how many employees you have, or things like that. That can, or I've looked at, I've analyzed how often I've picked it up in the past. So now I don't really need you to tell me when to pick it up. I probably know the seasonality. I study the data and I can predict. That's, I think, what Steve was saying earlier is this. He calls it, being on the edge of being able to predict. And so that's when it gets really fascinating to me, is that it's not hardware that gives you that solution. It's data mining, data management.
So great. Well, I think we're out of time, or very close to being out of time. This has been a really interesting, quick conversation, but lots of learnings for everyone that's listened in. And I think there's some really cool nuggets here around how efficient the data processing capabilities are, and all the solutions that we can use, ranging from deforestation to transportation, logistics, and of course waste. So thank you all so much. I think this was a really great conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.